Ooh, welcome back to Amazin But True, our New York Mets podcast from the New York Post. I'm your host, Jake Brown. Joining me a little bit later in the show will be former executive producer and comedy writer for the Elvis Duran Show. That would be David Brody. He's also done some stuff with SNY as well. So David will join me in just a bit. Those highlights you heard courtesy of SNY. The Mets are back and they're better than ever. Hey now, the Mets are back. Forget the June swoon. Who are those guys? The July Mets have replaced the bodies of the June Mets. And boy, is it a beautiful thing. A sweep. How sweep it is in Arizona. 100 degrees, keeping it 100. In the words of Gary Cohn, who said it on the broadcast. The Mets go in Arizona and sweep the first place Diamondbacks. And what a series it was, capped off by the only time the D-backs have been shut out all season, at the hands of Cookie and Lindor, the grass-growing bobblehead, Francisco Lindor. Que lo que mani. 5 for 5 day for Lindor, his first 5-hit game of his career, his first 2 triple game of his career. He was a double from the cycle, which on the second double he could have had, but listen, always take the extra pace. You're not thinking about yourself in the cycle. If it's going to be an easy triple, you take it. Francisco Lindor is saying, screw the All-Star game. I'll take the vacation. And you know what? I'm not mad about it. I'm not one of those guys who'd be mad about being snubbed for the All-Star for a guy who literally played sick on Wednesday, was probably still sick Thursday, had IVs Wednesday. The lineup came out late. He said he's good to go. He could use this break. Let him enjoy the time with his newborn daughter, his 2 kids, his wife, and the family. Relax for a few days. And, come back, keep hitting the baseball like you are. Driving in runs, hitting homers. Man, we want to talk about hitting homers. Francisco Alvarez is on another dimension right now. Alvarez, a homer in his last 3 games, homer in each game in Arizona, homer in his 4 of his last 5 games. Francisco Alvarez, folks, despite, getting hit by a pitch by Jose Ruiz after his maybe home run celebration later in the game, said maybe you should strike me out. Well, you can't. He's hitting piss missiles. He's on pace for 30 homers, and he didn't even start the year with this team. And when they did bring him up, he still wasn't playing all the time. Tomas Nido was getting chances. Gary Sanchez was getting chances. Omar Narvaez got chances. It's Alvarez's job now. And my God, the cojones on that beautiful man on Wednesday. Down to the final strike. The pitch before nearly, if the catcher caught it, could have been a foul tip strikeout. To hit a homer to tie the game is just cojones. Brass ones. Brass balls for Francisco Alvarez. To keep the win streak going, your New York Mets are 5-0 in the month of July. The best team July can buy. Flying high. And now they go to San Diego for 3 more before the All-Star break. And if they could close out with a sweep or 2 out of 3, well, listen, you are still under 500. This team is still 5 games under. A sweep, you're still 2 games under. But for a team that last week was dead in the water, for a team that we were saying no shot they could turn this around because they haven't proven it, it only took 5 days. They did this to us in May. Do not do it to us again, Mets. You teased us in May with that 5 days in Flushing. Now, don't make it the 5 days in the West Coast. Well, 2 of them were in Queens, but against West Coast teams. Don't reel us in again to only punch us in the face. Because the team I saw in Arizona this week is the team we expected to see coming into this season. A resilient bunch, a team with heart, a team with young talent, a team with veteran talent. And that's Lindor and Alonso finally breaking out of that slump, homering on Thursday. Carlos Carrasco, 8 shutout innings on Thursday. Kodai Senga, 8 dominant innings, 1 run and a homer. Alvarez backed him up, and Canna said, let me finish the job with a go-ahead triple in the 9th inning. I got emotional in the 9th inning on Wednesday night. I'm not even going to lie. There may have been a tear coming out of my eye when Alvarez homered. When Canna hit the go-ahead triple. Oh, wow! The oh, wow Gary Cohen is unmatched. Best broadcaster in baseball. And it was emotional because you were reminded one of the 5 days in May, those miracle 5 days. You know what I'm talking about? The Rays games, the comeback in the 9th, the Cleveland series, they swept. That week was magical and reeled us all back in. And then June said, whoop, wipe that all away. But now July is like, I mean, this is truly a Disney roller coaster ride. I don't know what coaster it is. It's the Harry Potter coaster. Is it the Rock and Roller Coaster? Is it the Incredible Hulk? Kind of like Hulk, because you go from angry to normal. Like, it has affected your mood, but my God, am I feeling great. 4th of July week, the Mets are in 5 in a row. The spirits are unmatched. We have raised our level, and life is good again when the Mets are good. It's crazy to think that they are still 41 and 46. But yes, you know what? You take the little things here. This team is now 6.5 out of the wild card. Coming out of last Friday, they were 10 games out. So that show that we dropped the last episode before the positive Monday, we were calling the season basically over. But you knew this team had this somewhere. You didn't know if it was going to come too late, though. But it hit right at the right time. And now you cannot lose your momentum and go to San Diego to face the other underachieving team in baseball and lose. You cannot do it. Man, if they sweep and it's an 8-game win streak going into the All-Star break, you almost want to just skip the All-Star break and keep playing baseball. The All-Star break could hurt the Mets in some ways because the mojo they're riding right now, you got guys go away and go on a break. You only got Pete Alonso going. Everyone else is either on a vacation or home chilling. You worry that that break will hurt them. But that's, let's not think about that. Let's think about the positives, and that's the starting pitching. The first time since 2015 that 2 Mets starters back-to-back days have gone 8 innings since Cologne and Syndergaard in August 2nd and 3rd, 2015. I mean, it's been 8 years, 8 innings. We're not even talking about a complete game. And we continue to say, if the starting pitching is good, that'll help the bullpen. Well, it surely is, folks. Of course, after we released the show, the Mets made a trade on Monday, and the guy they got in the trade made his debut on Thursday and had a nice inning, a scoreless inning. And you put him in a no-pressure spot, 9-0, bottom of the 9th, going for the sweep. He got the job done. Trevor Gott. Got Mets. So you have to make sure people know that means got milk. Because I did wear my stepbrother shirt, of course, as I always do to Summer Club, and people didn't know what the shirt meant or had never seen Step Brothers. And I was like, go home. Or I said, you don't gotta go, you ain't gotta go home, you gotta get the hell out of here. But really go home. Got milk, Trevor Gott. Chris Flexen came back with, they designated for an assignment. They released him, so they're eating Chris Flexen's cash and basically replaced Mucky and Hearn with Gott, which is an upgrade. Listen, Gott has had a wild, erratic career, kind of all over. But he's having a career year with a 4 ERA, which isn't good. But for the Mets, he's better than Jeff Brigham, who got sent down. And coincidence much that since Jeff Brigham was sent down, the Mets look incredible. I mean, they haven't needed him much. Scherzer struggled Tuesday, but they gave him the run support. Senga dominant Wednesday. They didn't give him the run support till the magical 9th. And then Thursday, they only needed 1 run because Carlos Carrasco was brilliant. And I'm looking at you, all the cookie haters. I'm looking at you when you had said, oh, McGill would be better than Cookie in the rotation. Peterson would be better than Cookie in the rotation. Joey Lucchesi would be better than Cookie in the rotation. Throw his ERA out the window. Because that ERA was from starts early in the season where he got rocked and he was basically hurt. Carlos Carrasco has given up 2 or less runs in 6 of his last 8 starts. Cookie has been a formidable piece of the rotation, just like he was last year. And there were people who forgot that because he had a little bit of a rough patch. I'm a big cookie guy. Yes, I do love cookies, but I also love Cookie Carrasco. And he is really kicking into gear, and it's a perfect time because David Peterson will get another start this weekend in San Diego. And then it's Quintana time. This is the guy who gave $13 million a year, starter coming off a career sub-3 ERA season. You put him in this rotation, and suddenly, if Verlander has a good start again this weekend, Scherzer's been solid. 4 runs wasn't great, but outside of that, he was okay, and then he's been solid. Senga's been brilliant. Now Cookie good. Now you throw Quintana in there, and maybe these Mets stars will start giving you innings. Maybe they will show up. But 5-game win streak, and Wednesday it's one of those games that you're reminded why you're a fan of this team. You're reminded why you love this game so much. Was that 9th inning. I mean, if you weren't rewatching those highlights again Thursday, are you really a fan? That was special. And that was the game where, like, something's cooking here. I don't think this is a fluke. I don't think they're going to get swept in San Diego. I don't think they're going to, go back to their old way. And listen, they might lose Friday, but, like, breathe if they lose. Go out, win Saturday and Sunday. I think it is crucial for this team to win this series and go into the All-Star break a brand new team. Especially if they could get this thing around, the 5 to 6 game range in the wild card going into the All-Star break. I think that's pivotal. But man, what a day for Lindor, just coming short of the cycle. What a week for Alvarez, homering left and right. Jeff McNeil's woke up a little bit. It's not just Tommy Pham hitting now. And the Mets, they're playing good baseball. It's the first time the Diamondbacks have been swept all season. So this wasn't a fluke either. They beat a very good Diamondbacks team. 8-5, 2-1, 9-0. 2 of the games pretty easily. 9th, they got a little close on Tuesday on the 4th of July. When we had our fireworks debate, are they overrated or not? But these are the 2022 Mets. These Mets was the saying last year. I'll root for these Mets. I like these Mets. These Mets are fun again. These Mets are electric. The Mets are back and they're better than ever. No more June swoon. July is here. I got to start making jingles. I'm the jingle guy. Jingle Jake, they'll call me. Mets have 12 homers in the last 5 games, 275 average. ERA for the pitching staff is 2. And suddenly they're not behind 7-6 teams in the wild card. The Phillies are the 3rd wild card. After that, Giants, Brewers. And then in your New York Metropolitans, who are tied with the Padres, and obviously they could change that this weekend. They take 2 out of 3. I was originally supposed to go to this series, but it's not happening now. I'm not happy about it. I would love to be in San Diego, but they're playing well enough where I keep this going, and I'll go to Boston for Mets Red Sox. I have a lot of people I want to see in Boston, and I will make that trip. I will make that trip. 6.5 back, Giants half, Brewers 1, and the Phillies will play the Marlins this weekend. So if the Mets can win, they'll gain ground no matter what. The Marlins are the first wild card. So, you would love the Marlins to probably beat up on the Phillies and gain some ground. Maybe the Giants lose too. But you're not, it's too early to start schedule watching who's playing who. Just keep winning. Just win, baby. Just keep winning. This is fun, man. Coming up next on Amazin But True, we'll bring on a diehard Mets fan. You've seen him recently on SNY and Mets Off Day Live. He's a former executive producer and comedy writer for the Elvis Duran Show. Let's welcome in David Brody to Amazin But True. Okay, we're back. Amazin But True podcast. Jake Brown here at Jake Brown Radio on Twitter. Follow the show at Amazin But True. Subscribe on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get podcasts. And you can watch our beautiful faces right now on the New York Post Sports YouTube page. Follow that Amazin But True playlist. Give us a thumbs up. Comment below. How you feel now about the Mets? The comments are going to look a whole lot different than they did about a week ago, won't they? Our guest joins us now, David Brody, former executive producer, comedy writer, the Elvis Duran Morning Show. He is now the co-host of the Brooklyn Boys podcast, and apparently he's going to send me a song he wrote for Figgy once to the tune of Getting Wiggy With It, as we all know as Getting Figgy With It. David Brody. Follow him on Twitter at David Brody. David, welcome to the program. How you doing?
I'm good. Listen, you just mentioned how the vibes are good for the Mets. You asked me a few days ago to do this podcast with you, and I was all ready to be negative and have criticisms and talk about their collapse. And now that they win 5 in a row, I have to rewrite the script.
Yeah, and you are a script writer, so you legit are rewriting the script. Are you writing a script of the 2023 Mets? Because it's shaping up to be a Pulitzer Prize winner if this team turns this around and goes on some magical run, and me and you are on a float down the Canyon of Heroes in November.
You know what? It's an interesting script, but I don't know if anyone would get past chapter 2 when they started being terrible. If you can get past that and get to this part, yeah. I think it's one of those you have to pick it up in the middle and say, all right, July 2023, as if nothing else happened.
Yeah, it's like when you put the pictures in the middle of the book, and sometimes I'm not a big reader, so I'll go right to the pictures in the middle. The middle is July fun. It's the 5-0 in July.
When you say the pictures
on a plane, it was Lisa Ann's book. So that's one time I probably shouldn't go to the pictures in the middle of the book because you don't know what's coming up in.
I was going to reference when you talk about pictures in the middle of the book, you're clearly talking about Playboy magazine in the centerfold. Back when they used to have those and people cared.
Well, David, the Mets are Playboy right now. This is Playboy baseball, and like I said in the open, like I hope they don't tease us like the 5 days in Flushing in May, where they beat Tampa Bay, they beat Cleveland. That series like sucked us all back in. We're like, all right, the Mets are back. We're saying the Mets are back right now. Wins like Wednesday remind us of the magic of last year and the resiliency and the comebacks and young guys stepping up like Alvarez. Do you think this is just a tease here, or did this team actually turn it around and maybe something the calendar changing in July hit them?
Well, remember 2015 when they picked up Cespedes at the trade deadline and they took off? Mm-hmm. I feel like the Gott trade may be the equivalent this year. They traded for Gott. They showed faith in the organization. They added, they took on the $4 million of Chris Flexen's money. They made it look like they were making an effort, and the team turned around. So I'm going with Gott is the new Cespedes, and yes, this is for real.
Wow, the Gott trade.
The Gott trade.
Gott turned the season around. Not God. It was Gott. His 4 ERA turned this season around, and Francisco Lindor not making the All-Star game was irrelevant because he said, I'm going to hit for a near cycle, and I'm going to tear the cover off the ball. And the Mets are clicking on all cylinders. I was fine with the trade. I wasn't like, oh, wow, this is incredible. And I also wasn't like, all right, who cares? Zach Muckenhirn was not good and, wasn't doing anything for this team. I'm curious if Flexen is back at some point, if they bring him back. And, because this guy a couple of years ago was very good. And there's a reason he was getting paid decently because he had a good couple of year run there. So we'll see how that trade ends up working out. God, like I said, the scoreless inning on Thursday. But like, this is what reminds us, David, of why we're Mets fans. Like, we get so hyped over these wins that in the grand scheme of things, they're wins to get them closer to 500. It's not like they're wins getting them closer to first place. It's them getting closer to having the even amount of wins and losses, which is still so freaking far from where we expected. Yeah. But it reminds you, like, it's this ride of being a Mets fan that these regular season games and those wins like Wednesday mean something to us. They get us emotional, and it's why we choose the orange and blue, and why you got the orange and blue jersey, the blue like me, and why you got the backdrop you do.
Oh, yeah, that's my podcast backdrop, which, of course, is blue and orange. We made the podcast colors Mets colors because I'm obsessed. Yeah, it's when you have a $595 million payroll and you're excited about creeping closer to 500, you realize that you're rooting for the Mets. You made a great point, Jake, because any other franchise would be like, oh, my God, but this is a travesty. The season's over. And we're like, hey, 5 in a row. Look, we're only 5 games under 500 now. That's a win. So they are creeping closer to being buyers at the deadline. And I have to be honest with you, if they're not going to win, I like when teams are sellers because then you get young prospects and you load your farm system up and you get rid of dead weight. And I was already writing off Marte to the Yankees and Robertson gone. And I'm thinking about what we can get in a package for whoever. And now they're looking like they're going to keep everybody. And the last place you want to be is in the middle, which has always been the Knicks' problem. They don't get the top draft choices. They're not winning. They're right in the middle. And I'm worried about that part. I want to know what you thought about that.
I listen, I'm the same, don't meet me in the middle. Like the song, do not do it. Do the opposite. Meet me in the middle. No, thanks. I think this team, and that's why I think this series is so important in San Diego, because you have to keep this positive mojo going. You got to get closer. This is a team where you're neck and neck with, you're tied right now with in the wild card. Another team you could pass, inch a little bit close in the wild card, and you go in the All-Star break, say 5.5 potentially out of the wild card. And this is a whole different season than it was when they were 10 out last Friday. When you end the month of June 10 out, and then, you got a tough schedule coming up. You got the Dodgers after that, another team you can gain ground on the wild card. But then you get the White Sox and Red Sox. You get the Sox in there. By the All-Star break, this team, and then the Nationals then the Yankees and the Nationals, this team could be within 3 if they just keep playing winning baseball and winning series against teams they should beat. So I would not like to be in the middle. I agree with you. If they're out of it, I think you sell pieces. I'm a little indifferent on Marte. I don't think his value is great enough now to trade him. He's still got 2 more years on his contract. Where Robertson's a rental, you get rid of him.
Mm-hmm.
Pham is a rental, you get rid of him. If anyone wants Vogelbach, hey, he's hitting a little bit here. He's showing some life. I'll give him some credit because, we all wrote him off, and I still would rather his spot be taken by Ronnie Mauricio and not Danny Mendick and not Luis Guillorme and not DJ Stewart. No offense to him, although he had a nice, sacrifice fly in his first Mets at bat. I would like to see the young guys here, but we'll see. I think if you're buyers, the key is getting one more key reliever. I mean, Gott was solid, but he's got a 4 ERA and he's got a career like 4 or 5 ERA. Get yourself an elite reliever, someone like a Chafin who you didn't sign, who thank God he gave him that homer. Because if he takes the Mets down 1-2-3, you're thinking to yourself, why didn't they just sign him? Why didn't the Mets just bring in Andrew Chafin as a lefty out of the pen, have him with Brooks Raley? Worst case, you got 2 lefties. So I think you go for an arm and then maybe a bat, maybe a DH kind of bat. But I don't know. I don't think they're in dire straits for a bat right now. I don't think they're in dire need for a bat. What's your target here? If this team plays like it does, do you go for a DH? Do you go for a closer type of piece? What do you do here at the deadline?
I think you have to do both. I think if you get a relief pitcher, your lineup is still weak. Last night aside, the 9-0 game, they need another hitter. Now, Alvarez has been great. I'm sorry. I know Vogelbach had 2 hits last night. I get it, but he shouldn't be batting 5th. That's a problem for me. The guy's a 200 hitter, and he's not trying to find himself. He's a career 200 hitter. And the fact that they're not bringing up Voit at the very least, and the fact that DJ Stewart had a sac fly, and we remember it as a great moment in the season, it tells you all you need to know about their offense. So I like a bullpen piece for sure. Maybe bullpen piece and then bat right under it. But when you've got Ronnie Mauricio in the minors, I can't understand why you're not trading him, right? You've already talked about how you're keeping the farm system. You're building up the farm system. You've got him in the minors. You're not bringing him up. You were 10 games under 500 and you still weren't desperate. You still weren't looking to. So for me, you're wasting at bats on Vogelbach. I don't know why you brought up Danny Mendick. You needed a backup to Luis Guillorme. Like you need a backup utility infielder to your utility infielder. And this left-right obsession that Buck has. Mark Canha has better statistics against righties than Vogelbach does. He's coming off a game-winning triple, and you bench him. And then you look at J.D. Davis's article last week about how he was glad to get out of the Mets because there's no consistency. You hit a home run, they bench you the next day. It's exactly right. They took Beatty out of the lineup. I think he may be dinged up a little bit.
He had a hamstring injury, so that
so they took him out fine. But Guillorme and Vogelbach are your options for the lineup, and you've got. Listen, Luke Voigt's got to have something left in the tank, right? He's hitting home runs.
I think Voigt, because what's the point of Stewart when you have all these outfielders? I don't think they needed another outfielder here, so Voigt made more sense in that case.
Yep.
I mean, Voigt for Vogelbach is the obvious replacement, but obviously Buck and the Mets have this fascination with Vogelbach. Is hitting a little bit better. I agree he shouldn't be hitting 5th, but I mean, it's hard to complain when they won 9-0, but that's the negative portion of the program. Those are all accurate things because there is no consistency with the lineup. When a guy has a great night who's on the fringe, he might not be there the next night. That's what's happened. It happened, we talked about it many times with Mark Vientos. He hits that big homer. Next day he was out of the lineup in that 5 days in Flushing. So there has not been a lot of consistency. And I agree, Mauricio is not a trade piece. Why not have him here? And the argument is, you want to give him more at-bats, more reps. His defense is shoddy. I get that. But I still think you can give him the at-bats here. You can get him 4 days a week here as a DH. as a backup third baseman. If you want to pitch him when the lefty's out there, put him at third base. You got to live with some of the poor defense, but he could provide that spark, like we keep mentioning Ellie De La Cruz has in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
You know, that could be the spark going into the deadline. That could go out there and you could trade other pieces to get more players. So we'll see how that works out in the next couple of weeks. But what a ride it has been. Jake Brown, David Brody, Amazin But True podcast. Elvis Duran, your last year was last year. You know, I told you I'm buddies with Crystal Rosas on the afternoon show. Mm-hmm. What was it like working with such an iconic figure who's had, you know, his own, what was it, Netflix special or whatever special he had on whatever platform it was? What was that like? And, you know, what did you do? You wrote different scripts for him. Tell us your role there and how special of a run it was.
Well, if we're talking about Elvis Duran, my former boss and coworker, I don't believe he had a special. I don't want to
check my research team.
I don't want people to go looking for a Netflix special. He never had one. Elvis is a very talented, normal guy. He's just really good at what he does, like anybody in any other job. He doesn't act like he's a legend in radio, even though he is absolutely a legend in radio. Radio Hall of Fame inductee. He just comes in and talks. He emotes. He has compassion for things that listeners are going through. He has an ability to talk about 9/11 and tragedy and then go right into making people laugh again and entertained. And that's a gift. As far as what I did, in addition to being executive producer and all the boring stuff that you have to do and meet with sales and tell people when to go to commercial and all, I wrote comedy bits. I wrote song parodies. I wrote sports team anthems. If one of the New York local teams, or since we were nationally syndicated, I had to write Phillies songs occasionally or Eagles songs, you know, other things. I also wrote comedy. If you're a fan of Howard Stern and you know what Jackie the Joke Man did and Fred and I wrote jokes, questions, and one-liners for members of the show as it was live. So I had a stack of scrap paper and a pen in my hand. And as they were talking, you know, Danielle would do an entertainment story and I might write something like a punchline or, you know, whatever, a joke or a quip or an insult to someone else on the show. And it was just more like seasoning. By no means am I implying they needed me to do that. Everyone on the show is very funny, but I added to it. So I would come up with things on the spur of the moment that maybe while they're talking, they're not thinking of, because I have the luxury of not talking and standing back and doing that. And then, you know, I wrote the listener games and contests. And when Greg T, the frat boy, was on the show, I helped create some of his stunt ideas and things of that nature. So there's no scripts. When you said, you know, did you write scripts? It's live. We didn't plan the show. You know, people will ask, well, you know, did you know what you were doing at 8:05? Or did you? So I'll be honest with you. Some radio morning shows in the country, they will at least have an outline of what they're going to do. You know, oh, we're going to talk about romance and dating at 7:00. And then when the kid's in school, we'll talk about sex at 7:50. And then we'll talk about this news story today. We don't do that. Everyone comes in with a stack of ideas and stack of papers, and we just go. And then somebody might call in with a funny phone call, and then we just riff on what they called about, and everything we had planned goes out the window. So no, there wasn't a script writing, but there was stuff to write. I kept busy for 24 years for sure.
24 years. So I assume there was a Mets jingle in 2006, 2015. Were there jingles when the team was winning?
You're not going back far enough, Jake. 2000 I got the Baja Men to record Who Let the Mets Out.
Yes.
That was a start. In 2006, I got Lucas Prada, who's a local dance singer, rhythmic. You'd hear him a lot on KTU.
He had the song. I know it.
And we say, "Let's go Mets." Yeah, let's go Mets. Yep, wrote that. Lucas.
You wrote that, or you brought them in and they performed it? Because I remember Who Let the Mets Out was on Z100. I was only 9 then. I hate to age you. I'm 32.
That's okay. That's all right.
I was 9 years old. So that was my first full year as a Mets fan. And I loved the Baja Men because Who Let the Dogs Out? Yep. They had Move It Like This was their other hit, but Who Let the Mets Out was a banger. That was Z100. So that's when you were there. That's interesting.
That was me. So we contacted the Baja Men, and they were all too happy to. When you work at Z100, it's the biggest pop radio station on the planet. Yeah. So people are willing to work with you. So in 2006, I had seen I think for the video of "And She Said," which is the original song, Lucas Prada had a T-shirt on that said Queens on it. I said, "Oh my God, he's from Queens." So I reached out to the record label, reached out to him, and he's like, "I grew up a Mets fan." I said, "Well, I have some ideas for the song." He says, "You write it, I'll sing it." So I wrote it, and I worked with him and his producer on singing it and phrasing, and and how I wanted it to sound. And we released it in 2006. I rewrote it for 2015. I rewrote it for last year. In fact, last year's version, which I think is online if you search for it, I added the Timmy trumpets. So at the beginning, it's and after the first verse, it goes and it goes back into the lyrics. In 2007, I had Kat DeLuna. She had a hit called "Wine Up." I changed that to "Rise Up," and we played that at Shea Stadium, and that was a pretty big hit. And then 2015, I had a big hit, but it wasn't by the original singer. It was to a Macklemore song. So yeah, anytime the Mets in 2009, you may have heard. Let's see, what was the big Yankee song? Oh, "Run This Town." I did Yankees "Run This Town." That sounded like Jay-Z and Rihanna. Jay-Z told me he liked it. The Yankees played it at the World Series. I did You Got a Feeling by Black Eyed Peas for the Phillies. And so when the Yankees played the Phillies, my songs were playing in both stadiums during the World Series.
Oh.
So that was good. It was a while ago, but yeah. So whenever, and I did it for the Devils, whenever a local team, for the Giants, I did I'm Blue, Dabba Dee, if you remember that song. I did Big
Of
Blue.
course. It's now one of the most popular songs, the remake of it in the country right now by David Guetta.
Yeah.
On Blue. So yeah, that's cool. As someone who, I'll do freestyle raps about my different teams on these podcasts. We used to also have a Yankees and Knicks and Nets podcast. I do our Jets and our Rangers and Giants as well. So as someone who likes jingles and rapping about, the team, what's going on, I respect that. And yeah, and we say, "Let's go Mets." And we say, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's go Mets." Definitely had that on my maybe it was Napster back then. might have been Apple. I don't remember if I had Spotify.
All right, I'll pretend you paid for it. It's okay.
Probably maybe I used bar mitzvah money to get it on
Nice.
Apple at some point. When I used to download the clean version of songs in high school because I didn't curse, so I would download songs that I could rap and sing along to without cursing. So wow, that is pretty cool. I didn't realize you're part of that. We got Pedro, Glavin, Floyd, and David Wright. I'm looking at all the lyrics now because you do a good job.
If you look at the lyrics,
a lot of the players. Although you mentioned Aaron Hallman, which he could have been left out.
Yeah, I think I mentioned 24 out of the 25 or something like that. You'll notice the only player who got first and last name respect was David Wright.
Yeah.
If you look at the lyrics, so he was my favorite at the time. He's still my favorite.
Yeah, well, Guillermo Mota didn't deserve Guillermo being in there. He cheated a few times. He wasn't the best.
Who ruined that song was Xavier Nady, because when he got traded, I had to rewrite the song because it ended. It was like, I think I rhymed "baby" with Nady. It was great, and then the car accident happened where they had to trade him for Oliver Perez, and so you have to be careful when you write a song, because if you write it too early, players come and go. And if you don't want to write it too late, because then you don't have it in time, and then they may collapse. I've written songs for so for instance, the 2017 song with Kat DeLuna, her record label was very excited. We went into the studio with Red One, who's a big producer, worked with Lady Gaga. Yep. He wasn't a big name at the time, at least that you'd know him. And we record it, and we're playing it on Z100, and they're all excited because the Mets were dominant that year, right? And they're like, "Oh, Kat's going to sing it at the playoffs and the World Series," and then they collapsed. And her management, I don't remember what country they were from, but they weren't originally from America, and I don't think they understood collapsing, right? Whether it was 17 games left, right? And they were like, "What do you mean you're not going to play anymore?" I said, "Well, the season's over." "What do you mean the season's over?" Because they had spent a lot of money, time, and effort into getting this produced. And I'm like, "Well, they choked, they collapsed, they what?"
It was like the Phantom song. It was like Phantom playoff tickets from those years.
Yeah, it was like you know what? Like the shirts they shipped to the third world countries.
Yeah.
The world champion. That's what happened to my song. They were playing it in some third world country sometime around November of that year because of the collapse. So it happens.
My co-host Nelson Figueroa knows a lot about that, at least the second one in 2008. That collapse. He was a part of that. So, and you have to get figure with it. So we'll play that we might not be able to play the show, but we'll tweet that or post part of that. Well, if the Mets going to run here, me and you are going to collab on a jingle for the 2023 Mets. As someone who hate to toot my own horn, but I can write good songs about my team because I'm good at rhyming things in my head, and the Mets have some rhymable names, some not as rhymable as others. Vogelback might be a tough one. Baby got back. But no, that actually might be an easy one. So we'll make a song for that. And then before we let you go, I know you said, what do you have, a Daniel Murphy story for me? A friend of the program who is now raking in AAA, who I wish the Mets would have signed from the Long Island Ducks. He had a quick ride into Queens. It would have been easy.
Yep.
Murphy, he told us on the podcast, he has a new swing. Before the season started, before he started with the Ducks, he's raking. He continues to rake and might be back in the big league. So what's your Murph story?
Okay, so I believe it was 2008. He was a rookie. So it was 8 or 9, but I think it was 8. And he had just come off his first week and a half or 2 weeks of baseball. He came off, if you remember, I don't know how old you were at the time, before you remind me, he had a really great first couple of weeks, and he was like the new big thing. And so I'm in the Mets clubhouse store on 42nd Street, and the guy in the back is unpacking jerseys, the Daniel Murphy jerseys. I said, "Oh, you got Murphy jerseys?" He says, "Yeah." The rookie's he's tearing it up, and everyone's been demanding it. We just got them in, and he's putting them on hangers, and he's hanging them up. I said, "Yeah, the kid looks really good. I'm excited about him." As I'm talking to him about Daniel Murphy comes in with a couple of people, a girl and a couple of friends of his, and they're shopping in the store, and they're looking around, and they're buying merchandise, and he's buying Mets gear. And I go up to him. I said, "Hey, I know who you are. You're Daniel Murphy. Can I get a picture with you?" And we took a picture. And I'm talking to him about the team and his fast start. And the manager figures out who I'm talking to. He comes over and takes a picture with Daniel. And then one of the sales guys comes over and takes a picture with Daniel. And now everyone, people in the store are like, "Who's this guy? Why is everybody taking a picture with Daniel Murphy?" So he goes about buying more stuff, and he goes up to the register, and it was the time when there were bracelets that had your player names on them. And he's like, "Oh, of course, Wright's got a bracelet. I don't have one of those. Give me a David Wright bracelet." He goes, "Give me 3 of those for all my friends." And the girl behind the counter is helping him buy stuff. And he's got a whole bunch of Met gear. I don't know why he's paying for it. He's Daniel Murphy.
I was going to say, he could get all this free from the team.
Right. So after all this happens, he goes to the register and he gives the credit card. And the girl says to him, "I'm going to need to see some ID."
Oh, my goodness.
And so I'm laughing and he's laughing because everybody in the store knows he's Daniel Murphy. And the manager comes running over and he goes, No. It's okay. You don't need to get ID. She goes, "But you told me that I have to get," she goes, "Not him. It's okay. We know who he is." So
they don't do that anymore. Back in the days, you need an ID with your card. Now people just take the card, even if it doesn't have your name. So
that's correct.
That's good. All right. And then what's your Ricky Henderson story?
Oh, boy.
Which is more PG-13.
Parents, you're going to want to put your kids in the other room. Spring Training 98, which, by the way, this jersey, if you can see it, is a Tom Seaver Spring Training 98, actually worn by Tom Seaver jersey. And so it was my first year at Z100, and I had made connections with the Mets. I had given them, the Phil Collins song that ends with "No mo, I don't care anymore," and it ends with "No mo." Well, I realized that sounded like Nomo, and Nomo was on the team. So I reached out to the Mets and I said, "You should play that when he comes out," and they did. And so I made connections. So I was going to be in Florida, and I said, "Hey, can I get passes to come to spring training?" They said, "Absolutely. You work at Z100 and you're a Mets fan." Sure. So I got credentials. I'm all excited. I'm a 12-year-old kid. I'm a Mets fan. And I get to go in the locker room and I'm interviewing players, and Mookie Wilson got naked in front of me. It's very strange. Mookie Wilson, you idolize Mookie Wilson, and now he's naked.
He was cooking in front of me a couple of weeks ago, his new catering business.
Was he dressed?
He was dressed. I didn't see. I did not see him naked.
Yeah, I was talking to him. I was recording him on a DAT getting IDs, and he's like, "Yeah, anyway." So, and he's undressing in front of me, and he takes his cup off. I'm like, "Oh my God, make eye contact." Anyway, Ricky Henderson. So I don't know if they've changed it, but back in the day at Port St. Lucie,
is it big? No.
The stands end around third base. So there's no stands in the outfield. There's not, not a big stadium. And as the stands end at third base is where the door is to the locker room. So, in spring training, you only play a couple innings and then you're done. So I come out and I'm waiting. I'm watching the game, and this area is about, 20, 30 feet wide and maybe 15 feet, in depth, right around the third baseline, right around third base. And to the right, you can see the stands. And to the left is a chain link fence about 20 feet high with a door, and fans are lining up there for autographs. And in this open space, the players who have already played come out in their street clothes and they watch the game. So I'm out there with Jay Horowitz and Ricky Henderson, and Ricky had just joined the team. I don't even think he played yet, right? He started in 98 with them. So he's standing there and people are up in the stands yelling, hey, Ricky, hey, Ricky. And he's like ignoring them. He's got his dark glasses on. And there's two kids. Wasn't a big crowd, just two kids, an older brother and a younger brother. And the younger brother is saying, hey, Ricky, can I get an autograph? Ricky, can you sign my ball? Ricky, can you sign my ball? And he's just standing there like this, ignoring him. And the older brother's yelling, hey, can you sign my little brother's ball? It wasn't for eBay. It was really for the kid. And he's ignoring them. And the people in the stands are like, hey, Ricky, sign the kid's ball. Come on, Ricky, sign the ball for the kid. This is going on for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Finally, he looks up and he goes, you want Ricky to sign the ball? Yeah, Ricky, sign the ball. He says, I'll sign the ball if you suck my... And he said it.
And how did people react to that?
And they cursed him. And he was like, yeah, I thought so. And he put he went back Ricky. And so Jay Horowitz grabs his arm and pulls him off to the side away from the kid wanting the autograph. And so, yeah, so apparently if you want an autograph from Ricky Henderson, you have to autograph his balls.
You have to perform sexual pleasures.
Yeah. You imagine that? Wow. Welcome to the team, Ricky.
Good Lord. Now that would never fly because literally everything's on video and be on social media and he'd be cut from the team within before the game even started. So it's a different world. Well, good stories there. David Brody. Follow him on Twitter at David Brody. And check out the Brooklyn Boys podcast. David, let's keep the positive vibes rolling so we can make a 2023 jingle. Maybe they'll play that at Citi Field.
Sounds good.
Hopefully we'll catch up later in the season. Thanks for coming on Amazin But True.
My pleasure. Let's go Mets.
All right. Thanks to David Brody. Great stuff from him. Cool stories. And I love those jingles. I remember them very well. So it was cool that he was a big part of making those happen. Because those were actually big parts of my childhood. I love Who Let the Mets Out, and we say let's go Mets. I love those songs. So as someone who does those myself or tries to in a very minor form, I appreciate that. That's a good night's episode 160 of Amazin But True, our Mets podcast from the New York Post. Thanks to Andrew Hartz and the intern Nick Guzman for helping me produce the show. Subscribe to Amazin But True on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Amazon, wherever you get podcasts. Subscribe to the New York Post Sports YouTube page. You can watch the full episode right here. Find that Amazin But True playlist. Keep up. We post all shows and all clips there. Give us a thumbs up below and comment. Is it real? Are the Mets for real right now? Are the Mets back? Follow us on Twitter at Amazin But True and at Jake Brown Radio. We got one more show before the All-Star break. That'll be Monday as we recap the first half, look ahead to the second half of the season. It'll be me and Nelson Figueroa and potentially a special guest. So stay tuned for that on Monday. Good luck to Pete Alonso. I guess we could say that on Monday as well. But going to San Diego, this was an incredible 5 days. But don't make it like last time, 5 days. Keep this run going. Get yourselves closer to 500. And hey, maybe when the Mets return home to face the Dodgers, which now could be a big series next weekend, maybe they could get to 500 that weekend. And after what happened in June, as ridiculous as it sounds, that would be a major accomplishment. And now that series in Boston, that Subway series right before the trade deadline, all could be crucial for the Mets if they want to be buyers before the trade deadline. Thanks everybody for listening to Amazin But True. Jake Brown signing out. We'll talk to you Monday. And as always, let's go Mets.